Today we're going to learn about the distributive law. But before we do that, we need to understand how to multiply monomials. That's a big word. We need to understand what a monomial is. You've heard me talk about terms. I want to make sure you understand what I'm talking about. A term is a single mathematical expression. So I've written down here some examples. 5x is a term. 6 is an example of a term. Negative 7xy. So they can be negative x squared y. And I can have letters multiplied together. What I can't have are things added or subtracted to these. Then it wouldn't be a term. A monomial, when you hear me talk about that, that just means the same thing as a term. So it's a single expression. If I add these together, so if I take 5x and 6 and I add them or I subtract them, I make what's called a polynomial. So a polynomial has many terms. And here are some examples. What I've done is I've put 5 and 6 together, making a polynomial, 5x and 6. Or I could put the negative 7xy with the x squared y. That makes a polynomial. I can put a whole bunch of terms together with adding and subtracting, and that makes a polynomial. So I just wanted to make sure that you understand what I'm talking about. Another thing we need to talk about is what's a coefficient. The coefficient is the number that is sitting in front of the variables. So in this one here, this is a negative 7 is the coefficient. In this first one, 5 is the coefficient. When there's nothing sitting there, it means that the coefficient is a 1. What I'd like you to do now is look at these 6 expressions and tell me which one is not a monomial. If you need to pause the video, pause it and think about it, and then come back and see if your answer was right. You should have chosen this one because it has 2 terms added together. That makes it actually a binomial. And you don't need to know that word to do well in math, but because there are 2 terms, bi, like a bicycle, has 2 wheels, this makes a binomial because it has 2 terms. Now let's multiply monomials. So what we have here is 3x times 2x. When it's squished together like this, it means that those 2 things are multiplied together. So what we do is we multiply the coefficients. The coefficients are the 3 and the 2. They get multiplied together. And we multiply the variables. So the x's get multiplied together. So what does that give me? When I multiply 3 and 2 together, I get 6. When I multiply x times x, you know that when you have 2 of the same thing multiplied together, you can write it using an exponent. So that would be x squared. And then my final answer, we write it as 6x squared. Let's try another one. This time we have 5x squared multiplied by 2x to the exponent 4. We do the same thing. We first of all multiply the coefficients, the big numbers, the 5 times the 2. Then we're going to multiply the variables. the x squared, and the x to the exponent 4. Now before I go down, you can kind of see the answer, but before I go down to show you that, I want to explain how to multiply this. This here, x squared, means x times x. And x to the exponent 4 means I'm going to multiply x by itself 4 times. Oops, that's a really big x. So now you can see that I have 6 x's all multiplied together. So we can write that as x to the exponent 6. Now, if you don't want to write all of those out, you can recognize that 2 plus 4 is equal to 6. So our final answer is 10 x to the exponent 6. I'd like you to try these 8 questions right now. Pause the video, try them, and then come back and check your answers. First one is just 3 times 3, and that's 9. This next one, I'm going to multiply the 4 and the 3 together. That gives me 12, and I have an x times an x, so that's x squared because there are 2 of them multiplied together. In this next one, I don't have any coefficients. Well, the coefficients are 1 and 1. So when that multiplies together, I get 1. And I have an x multiplied by an x. There are 2 of them. So that's x squared. For the next one, we will multiply 5 times 3. That's 15. And then x times x is x squared. Here, we're having, this is like a 1 in front of the x multiplied by 4. So that's just going to be 4. And again, we have x times x. So that is x squared. Here we have 2 times 4. That's 8. X squared times x. So there's 2 x's here and 1 x here, means I will have 3 x's multiplied together. Here, we just have the 3 multiplied by a 1, so we just write 3. X times x is x squared. And the last one, we're multiplying now, even though this looks like it, you might think it's subtract, because it's in this bracket, that means that's a negative 2 multiplied by 4. That's negative 8. I have 1x here times x squared means that there will be 3 x's multiplied together.